Ottarl vs. Bell, Mia, Ryuu and Hedin. Part 2 Battle Audio. A white elf appeared. Hedin cylinder. Master? Why? No, does that mean you really don't put on that stupid face that invites people, stupid rabbit? I should have found out from the moment I saved you, stupid. Because he had been suffering from Ottarl's baptism, Bell didn't know about Hedin's betrayal, and for a moment he wondered if he was mistaken, and then recalled the premonition he had said to Lily before the battle started, and his face was colored with surprise. Although Hedin looked over like something dirty, causing Bell's face to twitch, but still with the belated joy, a clumsy smile emerged. Now he was not the cold other, Hedin cylinder, who had abused Bell familia of Freya, but the master who had inflicted a lot of modifications on himself in front of boxing, and Bell clearly understood that. If it wasn't for this situation, the teenager would have shed a line of tears, and seeing this kind of teenager's smile, Hedin really still snorted unpleasantly and said, "Obviously you are there, how can it be so miserable, Mia? You're still annoying. I have a blank period." Then fill it in quickly. If you're still asleep, you and I will only be crushed. Hedin, who also threw a scolding at Mia, came down from the audience and threw out 2 vials. This is the last prop. Mia first used to plug the body wound, and then poured half of the remaining upper-level recovery medicine and upper-level mental power recovery medicine directly on the heads of Bell and Ryuu. After being surprised and probably realizing that there was no use in refuting, the recovered Bell, Cranel and others staggered to their feet. Hedin. I don't need to explain it to you, Ottarl. The attack of his own was obstructed by the warlord, Hedin, and even fell to the enemy, but Ottarl didn't look the least bit shaken. He put his black sword, which had lost its magic effect, on his shoulder and looked at the elf. Answer me a question. What question? How much do you know? Turning his back on Bell, who had risen to her feet, Hedin, who was confronting Ottarl, asked indifferently. To temper this stupid rabbit, I did something. Instigated Honi and the others and had them strike him to the point of near death. To make him as handy as possible. Bell forgot how moved he had just been and turned into a stone statue, at which point Hedin asked again. But, only you refused my instructions. That was after the goddess, Freya's, boxing began to produce cracks in. He deliberately intensified baptism. Hedin refuted the others and proposed that Bell should be forced into a desperate situation immediately, wanting all the cotters to join baptism. Ottarl, you do the same. Beat that stupid rabbit with your rigid sword. There's no need to include me. Hedin, I'll leave it to you. But only Ottarl said so, firmly refusing him. At that time, did you already guess that I would betray and become like this? Hedin had been active in the shadows, and even the goddess, Freya, had not noticed this. But only the martial artist in front of him pulled away as if he had sensed it. Hearing Hedin's question, Ottarl's expression rippled as he answered. I am not as smart as you. There is no way to know what will happen. At this point, the rust-colored eyes stared closely at Hedin, as well as Bell, who was standing diagonally behind. But, at that time, I saw the picture. The image of you two standing in front of me. Just like the sight in front of him, he concluded thus. Hedin crooked up his face. Stop surpassing strategy based on feelings alone, you battle fool. He smacked his tongue unpleasantly when he felt this instinct that could be called martial intuition. Hedin stared at the being who was the complete opposite of himself, who acted on theory, and finally raised his battle spirit. Have you finished? Now I'll start to destroy you quickly. Or else the troublesome stupid cat will be coming after us. As if it was time to end the question and answer session, Hedin gathered his mental energy and shifted to a battle-ready state. That's when Bell called him back in a panic. Master? Are you going to fight with us? Is there any other option in this situation, pug? Don't talk. We are completely helpless. Do you have a plan to fight against the king? I'd like to ask you why you're not prepared. What's the point of fighting a real monster head-on? Make a plan for me. Think of all the ways. Are you going to face the floor master head-on? He casually dealt with the sullen Bell, and also humiliated Ryuu's next question. Hedin didn't even look at them, implying that this battle was the same as the battle against the Labyrinth Lone King. Mia, I'll be the rear guard. You take the stupid rabbits over there and go around a bit more. We can't immediately follow your command for any serious link-ups, can we? There was no expectation of such a thing to begin with. The wise general's eyes were simply fixed on the martial artist standing there leisurely and stated his request. Go buy time. Just 10 seconds. In the next instant, he released his magic power and announced that the battle had begun again. Eternal Strife, Undying Thunderbolt. Using the elf's song as an opportunity, Bell and the others rushed out in unison. Ryuu, on the other hand, brought along parallel chanting. And instead of taking a passive stances, Ottarl showed an attack stance for the first time. He sprinted straight forward. Don't underestimate people. As if to say that there was no reason to take the shelling of the defender, Hedin for nothing, he burst in. Bell, Cranel and Ryuu were easily bounced aside by the rust-colored boa's burst, but Mia was the only one who blocked it. As if using her body to prove that the race of strength, dwarf, is true, she took the boa's impact and dug the bottom of her boot through the completely broken stone slab. The black sword and the giant shovel bit together, maintaining a second of antagonistic time. And within that second, the elf had moved. Hedin, who was thoroughly using Mia as a shield, began to move. He ran or jumped along the outside of the theater stage, cutting a circular trajectory. While moving at high speed, countless lightning bullets were created. Instead of immediately firing at the target, Ottarl, the thunderbolt stood by on the east, northeast and north sides, fixed in place. Seeing this sight, Ottarl's eyes widened for the first time since the battle began. He immediately understood the enemy's intention and swung Mia away vigorously, trying to crush Hedin. Flame Volt. Saffron Wisp. However, two flames stopped him. Bell released Inferno Thunder's rapid-fire cannon, and Ryuu was once again surrounded by flaming petals. The former was a disruption without being able to stop him, while the latter was a strong attack that bred great firepower. Without much aiming, the successive shots of Inferno Thunder rolled up bursts of wind and bursts of inflammation obstructing the view, and the bursts of slash that approached from the side forced Ottarl to meet it. Although unable to break the absolute defense, the explosive flames still forced the boaz to stop in his tracks. Even if he ignored Bell's barrage and sent Ryuu flying, by then Mia would have revived and attacked again. Just as Mia and the others were resolutely stalking and not letting go, the lightning bombs were fixed in order in the northwest, west side, and southwest. Then. The promised 10 seconds. You've worked hard, and I'm going to give you something in return. After finally completing the fixation on the southeast side, Hedin stopped in his tracks. This is Ray's surrounding net. As the shock of Bell and Ryuu who looked around showed, the stage of the theater was now surrounded by countless lightning bombs floating in the air. Using the standby state of magic to set bombs. Using his LV6 ability, especially his excellent magic control, Hedin maintained and configured the lightning bombs in the places he moved to. Even Ryuu, who had reached the same ability, couldn't do such a thing. The dome-shaped arrangement of magic bullets was like a fierce starry sky. It was also a prison for the fierce boars. The total number of fixed lightning bombs, 978. Seeing the arrow clusters aiming at himself without exception, Ottarl's eyes narrowed as he looked around. Feel free to make a fuss, avant-garde, after that, I'll cooperate with you. The adventurers understood Hedin's instructions by intuition and instinct, and rushed forward as he asked them to do. Bell ran ahead and slashed from the side with his dagger. Ottarl took the absolute defense stance and was about to give him a heroic death. Up to this point, it was the same as the previous attack and defense. What was different was the direction after that. Sando no Hyao, Trier. The lightning bombs set up on the east side were fired at the same time as Bell touched the enemy. Ottarl was taken aback. In a completely different direction from the teenager's surprise attack, 3 magic bullets approached from behind him. He quickly twisted his arms and upper body, which were intended to meet the teenager, to correct his posture to avoid the attack, but at that moment, the long-prepared Hestia's blade showed its fangs. The fierce sound of metal. The backhanded grip of the chop, the boaz raised his left wrist in the nick of time, and the hand armor blocked it. However, it was defended. But, it worked. Bell's own eyes widened, and his back trembled from the solid feel of his hand for the first time today. Following the policy of disengaging with one blow, he quickly retreated before receiving Ottarl's counterattack. He was replaced by Ryuu, who was approaching rapidly from the exact opposite direction. She fell her body as far forward as possible, and swiftly and sharply swung her inflammatory sword from the very low bottom, in the dead center of Ottarl's vision, whose height exceeded 2 m. This clever dodge was also immediately responded to by Ottarl with inhuman speed, however, the soldier of 7, SJO DRS's. This time too, a new lightning bullet was shot from the southwest side of his back. As if to say that he would not be fooled twice by the same technique, the veins emerged with a rigid wrist, causing the lacquered black sword to flash twice, swinging Ryuu away with the lightning, but Mia appeared at that moment. Look! The moment after the blow was struck, there was a gap. The huge shovel was swung at the perfect time, sending the defense and the huge body of the boas flying. It worked. It's amazing. The gods who saw the whole attack and defense with their mirrors could not contain themselves and made a big noise on the 30th floor of the Tower of Babel. Finally, the fierce one retreated from the center of the theater, and the result of this battle made both the enemy and the camp extremely excited. This is too much. At the exact moment when the front guard attacked, he added what would normally be a sheer kill magic without missing a beat. And the number and power were adjusted so that it wouldn't affect Bel and the others. The goddess Loki and Hermes, who were watching the battle here, also praised the omniscient gods immediately saw through Hedin's anticipated strategy. The establishment of one-sided linkage. A temporary team cannot expect to be in unison. It was the limit if they could cooperate with each other. And the rear guard made up for everything in his mind and supported him. A simultaneous attack with the front guard. This was Hedin's ploy. From the farthest position, he saw through the movements of Bel, Ryuu and Mia, and then freely operated the lightning arrows that unfolded in all directions, matching Bel's attack with theirs. He would not be foolish enough to fire all of the close to 1,000 magic bullets. Even if he was wounded, Ottar's complete defense was still able to resist the simultaneous firing from all directions. That's why it was a simultaneous attack. Combining magic bullets with the front guard's excellent attack increases the option of Ottar's defense. It is not necessary to give damage. Staggered timing, interference with concentration, inconsistency in attack and defense, all of these accumulate little by little, and sooner or later, complete defense will be broken. Forcing the expansion of either one or the other. Or make it happen continuously. Forcing the sound of thunder, noise, into the game between Ottarl and Bel and others. Just one magic bullet is powerful enough to make a second-level adventurer faint. The attacks of the first-level adventurers, Mia, were even more so. And Fierce One must counter both. The tactic of focusing on defense backfired. That white elf, with her pretty face like a girl, is a pure sadist. Of course, it's thanks to the youngsters that they were able to hurt Ottarl, thanks to their quick moves. Right, Bet? Gee whiz, with that kind of defender, just about anyone can put dirt on his face. Next to the shouting Hermes and Loki, Bet was not happy. He did not want to identify with the rabbit, so he said so, but this must mean appreciation of Hedin, making the werewolf even more unpleasant. Ottarl, this is the formation I came up with in order to burn you to death. Because I could not complete the front and rear guard movements by myself at the same time, it was abandoned, but here is just the right place to use it again. The man who had been staying at the east side of the theater and manipulating magic, the elf Hedin murmured calmly. Once again, the relationship between the members of the Freya Familia is particularly bad. The brutal intrafactional competition where the members of the group clash with each other, and the first-rank adventurers are no exception. In order to defeaturing Ottarl, Hedin started developing this lightning formation several years ago, and now it is used here. Goo. The tactic of using Ottarl as an imaginary enemy was very effective. The lightning bombs that attacked at the same time as Bel and the others seemed to have a will of their own. Even Ottarl had to be distracted by the countless thunder swords and lances, as the thunder soldiers led by itself King Hedin launched a wave attack. Hedin was very clever. All around, including the thunderbolts that unfolded at the head, he was sometimes very economical, and sometimes boldly put them in. When I thought he would just grab the dead end of Ottarl and launch a one-sided snipe from behind, he was doing again, firing from the left and right of his field of vision as well as from the front, adjusting to hide that real blow and hit directly on top of the giant body. Using Bel's attack as a decoy or as many as 30 rounds of thunderbolts as a feint, precisely calculating the launch angle, bullet speed, and sequence, not so much to break Ottarl's defenses, but also to keep his brain overloaded. In addition, the lightning bombs will cause electrocution when blocked by the blackened greatsword or hand armor, causing the orc's flesh to gradually accumulate real damage. In conjunction with the front guard's assault, Hedin, who is manipulating magic at the large rear guard, could be considered the commander. And his long-handled sword, the first level of armamentous area, is the command baton. It is a long-handled weapon made from the branches of the great sacred tree, and also a staff that increases the magic power of elves, just like Ryuu's Elvis Justia. The magic gem at the end of the handle glowed, causing the thunderbolt to cry out. Ryuu, boy. Let's go. Bel, Ryuu and Mia also gradually adapted to the thunderbolt's aid, and instead of wheeling and dealing, the three of them launched their attacks almost simultaneously. So, at the moment when Ottarl's complete defense wavered, the adventurers struck. Ola. Mia launched a surprise attack from the front. Hedin's call rang out in a distant echo. Twelve of the 12. Company, Regios. He threw all the lightning bombs located on the north side, raining down on Ottar's back. Faced with the front and back attack, Ottarl was even a little stubborn not to choose evasion. Fierce One was sure that the choice of giving up absolute defense would be the one that would get him into a desperate situation like being chased by a hound, so he twisted his upper body and birthed Storm. A fierce slash. He used the length of the lacquered black sword that was close to his own height, range, to sweep away Mia, countless lightning bombs, and everything close to him. Mia barely blocked it with a giant shovel as a shield and stepped backwards, but her lips turned into the shape of a smile. Mia and the large number of lightning bombs that were injected were decoys. Parallel to the sky, let the earth be covered with star trails. Parallel chanting came. Ryuu, who had released the flame petals, launched a burst and chanted the inheritance magic, as Straya memories at the same time. Now he had just met the attack with his whole body. Coupled with the gyration stop, there must be a gap created. Ottar's eyes widened at the blast shadow that had bullied him close to his arms, yet still responded. No. He ignored the inertia and reaction force, causing his tendons to roar with grief, and was about to swing a breaking blow. A reaction speed that exceeds that of a normal human. Even beyond the giant source of strange power. Ryuu Lion's pupils reflected the black severing blade that was about to swing down, and at that instant. Go to. The same pitch black color of the go. The scarf, which was also the color of pitch black, flew over. It was the Goliath scarf that Bell had untied from his neck and thrown out. It was not a straight line shot, but an indirect attack that twisted strangely like a snake. The scarf wrapped around Ottar's pitch black sword and stirred together, sealing the severed head slash. LV, 7 versus LV, 5. Normally a tug-of-war would never be able to beat the opponent. But the twisted posture he had been in continuously since the gyrating slash had a negative impact, causing the Enix stance to waver for a moment. This moment was enough. Justice is flowing. With the chanting and close-up all completed in the name of Blast, Ryuu unleashed the magic. He posed sideways and placed his star sword at his waist in Juino type. Looking at the left hand resting on top as a non-existent sheath, he merged Technoqueen Magus into one. Kaguya, lend me your power. What was released was the Jidao secret Ian once used by her archenemy as well as her comrade, Kajano Kaguya. 5 lights. The star sword sped in the same way as Gumi, and in a flash, 5 slashing blows were born. What? 5 sword slashes that flew irregularly from the front, back, left, right, and overhead. From the top of the head, from the left to the right, from the back, and from the front with a horizontal flash. It could be described as the sword of Juiho splitting into 5 and swinging towards Ottar's body from 5 directions. Gu woo 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 woo. Kajano Kaguya's magic, 5 light. This magic can only generate magic slash at any position, but combined with her Juga technique, it becomes a sure kill sword that cannot be defended or evaded. Even a sneak attack would definitely be blocked. Even the Inferno overconfident, Alize would be caught by him. Because he was sure of this, Ryuu used this 5 light slash. As expected, the strongest blocked the frontal horizontal flash with his hand armor, and was then captured by the remaining 4 lights. The splitting magic blade hit the chest protector, hand armor, and forehead protector, destroying the few defenses Fierce One had. Blood spurted out of the martial artist's vision, bright red magic elements danced wildly, like flowers falling from the other side. Oh. Bell immediately pulled up the black scarf, Goliath scarf, wrapped around the great sword yanked to his side. The hilt of the sword was peeled off from Ottar's stiff hands. The huge sword fluttered in the air. The loss of weapons and defense. The decided defense power was ebbed. Hedin's eyes dangled like twin swords and shouted. Fire, stupid rabbit. Bell let go of the scarf, and with a fierce fire coming out of his left palm, he unleashed his magic together with his master who was manipulating lightning. Flame Volt. All soldiers fire, Carruthers shield. The blazing thunderbolt and the thunderbolt set in a dome shape were all thrown. An uncountable storm of magic engulfed Ottarl. Oh. Who? The fire and lightning barrage hit its target while Ryuu retreated. The firepower exploded instantly with the flurry of lightning shells with more than 500 rounds left and the rapid-fire magic, Firebolt, that fired like crazy. The boa's man in the center of the cannon fire was trapped in a vortex of lightning flames, denying him the opportunity to break away. Thunder marks kept blasting. The teenager also kept shouting and shooting. To fight it out here and chip away at everything in Ottarl. The black sword flying in the air fell with a crash, plunging into the ground like a tombstone, while Bell and Hedin still didn't slow down the pace of the shelling. Eternal Conquest, Undying Thunder General, Varian Shield. The moment the soldier's arrow cluster shot out, Hedin immediately wove a chant that called forth a huge general's light. The impact of thunder was like a final blow. A huge cannon flash exploded in the center of the area. The violent impact and stormy wind pushed Ryuu to Maya's side. Electricity and a lot of sparks flying. The left arm that was stretched forward was finally lowered by Bell, who was breathing heavily, but immediately set up his dagger again. Even the first-level adventurers will be wiped out in this shelling storm. But the enemy surpassed the norm. To snuff out carelessness and negligence. He stared into the depths of the fading smoke together with Hedin, who was racking his long-handled sword, Desaria. Over there in the smoke, a large black shadow emerged from the center of the shelling. Ottarl was still alive. The giant tree-like arms interlocked with each other and stood on the ground with both feet. The steel-like flesh spurted out blood like Bell and the others, burnt to a crisp and badly damaged. He was wounded. Not even close to near death. Can defeat. The light of hope kept shining into Bell's mind. He was sure that he could defeat the present-day Ottarl, and took a step forward, and just then. The beast raised his head from his interlaced arms, and his eyes, whose pupils were twisted like fangs, met his gaze. His heart, his instincts were held tightly. The light of hope that shone into his mind was replaced by the most dangerous alarm. Ryuu and Mio also held their breath, while Hedin, whose face had changed drastically, shouted out in spite of everything. Hurry up and end it. However, the block of sound, which was enough to block all of these, made a booming sound. The sound block that was shielded from all of this, however, made a roar. It was a roar that resounded through the sky. No, it should be called the hiss of a beast. This level of supreme shout caused the bodies of Bell and others who heard it directly to lean back, causing all the people on that side of the mirror to fall. Even the adventurers' bodies went limp and fell off their chairs, and the god's eyes widened. The monster's roar, with its intimidation, song. This androgynous creature, though in mortal form, bound to one's mind and body by virtue of the primal terror that compels one to stop. This means only one thing. That is that the martial man has degenerated into a beast. Just one roar, but even the first-level adventurers, Bell, were robbed of their freedom for several moments. At that moment, the eyes of beast that looked up to the sky turned forward. It fixed its eyes on the prey. Bell in their hearts and bodies let out countless screams, and the next moment he began the real uvishment. Ow 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 now. Then it begins. First the bursting charge that causes the stepping stone slab to crumble, then the approach that is synonymous with violent pressure. Without allowing evasion or resistance, the huge shoulder of the murderous weapon caught an elf. The characterless voice forced through the throat, Hedin flew up. As Bell and the others reacted and froze in place, he slammed into the wall of the theater. Shards of stone flew everywhere, consciousness kept flickering, and for a moment his breathing was completely interrupted. Neither tactics nor strategy, but a ridiculous burst of shattering. The power that surpassed even the magic blast made Hedin spit blood, and the next thing he saw was a palm. Look, Question mark? The palm slammed into the face. The 5 fingers, tusks, of the fierce boas covered the view in appearance. The glasses worn naturally shattered, and shards of glass and metal stuck into the skin, stirring up the white beauty. However, these are only small things. So small as to be laughable. The 5 instruction skulls sunk into the scalp emitted a mournful sound, and for a moment, Hedin's vision and the entire brain marrow shook. The focus of vision shifted dazzlingly. Heaven and earth were turned upside down. Himself was thrown out at an absurd speed, so fast that his body was even spinning, and his intelligent mind came to the same conclusion as a fool. In the next instant, he was like a cannonball that blew the ground to pieces. Master. Hedin was thrown from the edge of the field to the center by Ottarl, raising a large cloud of smoke and dust, breaking everything in its path. Time stopped for everyone. Understanding the situation, the adventurers moved quickly. They blocked in front of the beast that had transformed into an instinctive collection to attack its prey, and Bell, Ryuu and Mia vowed to guard the rear guard, Hedin. However, the front guard, wall, and the leg were also smashed to pieces. A hammer called a randomly swung fist shattered Mia. Even the little finger, claw, that did not take the shape of a hand sword cut Ryuu. 5 fingers, fangs diagonal a flash, digging down Bell's combat clothing, as well as the flesh underneath. The dwarf who embraced the earth spat blood. The elf dodged the attack and was touched just a little, but there was still blood splashing around. The human who carved the 5 twisted claw marks put on the blood attire and turned into a bright red mannequin. Swordplay and martial arts, skill and strategy were forgotten, and instinctive rampage was followed. The forcibly imposed abuse neither accepts evasion nor recognizes defense. Absolute attack. Absolute defense backfired and eventually became a minion that existed only to slaughter the enemy. Now it was no longer a battle of adventurers, but a scene of the weak and the strong, causing all those watching the battle to pale of the onslaught. That's... The holy maiden, Iramid, lost all her blood color. Does it mean that? The almighty, Asfi's lips twitched. Bestialization. The braver, Finn, crooked up his eyes. The fierce ones, real killer. It says become violent and strong, but there should be a limit to it. Aurelia head to Adorak. The goddess Hermes and Loki, who were watching the same scene from the Tower of Babel, also raised their voices. Bestialization. Among the orcs, this phenomenon was only confirmed from a few races and belonged to the struggle instinct itself. As Loki said, release the bestial nature and power hidden in the body, so that the body's ability to rise. The most representative is the werewolf. The beasts of the wolf will bestialize after bathing in the moonlight, gaining great power, and people will even say that no race is the opponent of the wolves under the moon. Common a big guy's bestialization is different from the werewolves, neither do we have to choose the time or the place. Bet stood at the slanting back of Loki and spat out these words with hatred. At the time of obtaining God's favor, the bestialization that was the origin of the orc race was closely connected to the skill. To enter the bestial state, one must meet certain conditions or be accompanied by certain risks. However, I'm afraid that the trigger of bestialization, a condition for the activation of skill of Ottarl, is arbitrary. Unlike the werewolf who could only be bestialized under the moonlight night, even in the daytime, even in the middle of the labyrinth, dungeon, could fall into beast. Bet knew what fierce one looked like when fighting and clearly saw through that. The effect is also not at all comparable to other wastes. That boar's beastification is not the enhancement, is the monster itself. The tattoo on the left side of the face became distorted as the werewolf admitted that bestialization he was no less powerful than his own. The beast reflected in the mirror was clearly different from the previous martial artist. Coincidentally, it was almost exactly the same as the sight brought by Haruhan's rank ascension. Many people fell down, and the city was almost considered to be in a commotion, when the adventurers in the tavern, whose blood was gone, murmured softly that the current fierce one is level 8. No one expressed certainty, because once they were sure, the battle would have lost the meaning of watching it. Eternal conquest of the indestructible Thunder General. Cut to pieces and thrown to the far side of Bel in them, Hedin propped up his trembling body with one hand outstretched. The appearance wet with blood lost all submissiveness, and he called up the magic of maximum power. Very sincere, however, it was too late. The Boaz man, who could be described as a beast, sensed the breath of lightning and raised his fist like a rock high. Bel, Ryuu, Mia, and Hedin, who couldn't even stand up, were all watching in despair. The muscular wrist became a crooked fang, and in the next moment, the fangs plunged into the earth. Ow 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 ow. He swung down with a great storm that punched everything away. Karma, the shattering fragment of sound, I don't know if it came from Hedin or from Bel. The King Ottarl and beast form blow a triggered cracking, stirring up the earth's crust, causing the earth to scream. The waves of shock that spread in all directions engulfed all adventurers equally, teasing them, blowing them away and burying them in the depths of rubble. The outer wall of the theater crumbled and forgot its original shape. Even the cliffs against the lake fell downward, and the island terrain changed. The strongest roar of the day surrounded the Orza city ruins. The ground was no longer covered with slabs of stone, but pieces of stone, and right where these pieces were piled up in a heap, he pulled out his fist. When the dust dispersed, only one beast was left standing there. The sky without a single cloud looked down sadly at the battlefield where the adventurers who could not move fell. Unknowingly, the sunlight, which was bloated with an illusionary feeling, was about to take on the color of dusk. The sun tilted to the west and the earth roared. The violent shaking shook the whole ruins, and the hidden male god, Plutus, and goddess, Hathor jumped up in fear, but the familia members still had to fight. The opponents in front of them had to be defeated. The smell of dusk gradually drifted in from the west. The sky overhead was still blue, but it would soon be tinted with the color of dusk. This is the color of the end. For the warriors who had been fighting in the battle wilderness, it was that announced the end of the battle. Ottarl picked up the black sword that had fallen at his feet and slowly glanced to the west. He looked in the direction of the hill where the house of God was standing, which was gradually colored red. In the amphitheater that was completely destroyed, the only one left standing was Ottarl. The dwarves and elves buried in the rubble were only occasionally moving and were already in the wind. So, is this the end? While the Boaz man was thinking this without emotion. Karma, A man let out a beastly whisper and stood up. Long, dusty blonde hair. Covered with a layer of blood and injury makeup, there is no trace of beauty in the appearance. Only the pair of red coral eyes would not let go of the light that was about to disappear. Hedin. Ottarl is really still without any emotion, just watching the same strong warrior as himself. The elf managed to get to his feet, are almost falling several times and steadily stepping back down, raising his head and glaring back at the Boaz man in front of him. Is this what you want to do? Ottarl said almost as if provoked. Hedin crooked up his lips and forced a smile. Who knows what does look like to you? At least, not like your style. The pupils were still distorted, and the beastly state of Ottarl answered him with words that still had the voice of reason left, but were very plain. You value efficiency, you could have done better and won this battle. Ha! District, victory. Hedin's lip strips blood and snickered at his statement. This, boring war, game. From the moment I betrayed you, it's been a dead end. If only I would go and break that lord's flower, wouldn't it? This is the truth. After the destruction of the base camp, Hedin broke into the house of God. And snatched the flower from Freya's hand. In that case, the war with the exaggerated name of faction war would have ended in a hurry. But, that's meaningless. That kind of thing, it's meaningless. What I want to do is not that kind of thing. His words began to take on heat, and his spirit kicked up the limits of his injured flesh, overriding it. That goddess has freed me from my duty as a king. Then this time, it's me. I must drag that goddess down from the throne of the queen, king. Ottarl listened to his monologue speechlessly. She must be freed from the so-called yoke of the goddess. Hedin could not understand the goddess like the daughter of the gods, Horn, even if he could surmise her heart. Even so, his heart, which knew what a king was, found out the misfortune of the goddess. Seeing the smile that emerged from the girl, he already knew what her true expectation. This cry could not reach the ears of the goddess on the throne. However, this will reach the hearts of those who have not yet risen. Do you know? Do you know the face of the goddess who seeks love and suffers because of love? That was the room of the gods once upon a time. The mask of the goddess who was confused by love with the hair ornament of an elf. With a click, the dwarf's fingers grabbed the rubble. Do you understand? The one who gave up all the things other than love, but still suffering the same as the girl, her attachment. That was the conversation facing the teenager. It was a conversation with a young man, a girl who was only seeking the heart of a young man, and a girl who was torn by the ties of abundance. With a creak, the elf's hand clenched the wooden sword. Did you notice it or not? The tears are still wetting her cheeks. This was the last motivation. The teenager first trembled like a flame. If you noticed, why did you still lose? If we lose this battle, her tears will never stop. A lonely victory will get love, and that lord will always be a goddess. The words that shook the surrounding area kept beating their hearts. The words that shook the surroundings kept beating their hearts, stimulating them to move their feet that were ready to stand up. Then, we must disgrace her face. To bury the sublime goddess. Even if Freya-sama would not allow such an act. What kind of a servant is it if you don't do your best for your master to save your life? If you don't have the awareness of being hated, what kind of familia is it? Then we said so. This is the loyalty that I will dedicate to her. This is the reason why the elf, Hedin, is the knight of loyalty, Hedin Sullander. The foolish will to draw his sword against the goddess even if he bears the brand of a sinner. Everything is for her. So, it was as if he had been touched by this very capricious, pretentious, and unusually noble sin. The elf stood up. The dwarf peeled his body off the ground. 3 pairs of eyes stared at the wall that was blocking in front of them. You disappear. You disappear. You disappear. Hedin's faith, Ryuu's will, and Maya's fighting spirit ran Ottarl through. Will you knock you down? Finally, the teenager stood up. Go to Misir, there. The people who confronted each other. The people who kept fighting. The souls that the goddess had fallen in love with at first sight made the warrior Ottarl narrow her eyes. The goddess has given favor, but you want to reject it, resist, right? Not only the teenager, he looked out at all the people whom the goddess loved. Very well, come on. Then he raised his black sword and looked at them with the eyes of a beast. This is the end. The final battle was declared. There is no chance of victory. There is no way to live. But still, they struggled and tried to catch the light, and the adventurers were the kind of people who would not give up. That's why they will definitely attract the golden light when they stand up. Manabru Mallet, dance. Foxtail fell from the sky as a cohesive ball of light, wrapping Hedin, Ryuu and Mia. Their stunned pupils immediately reflected the intruder's figure. Elf. Goddess. Hestia, covered in sweat, came running through the gully formed by the destroyed outer wall. Behind her, Haruheim stood on the rubble on the southwest side and was unleashing her magic. Following Lily's instructions, they kept struggling and finally reached Belle and the others. Belle, light up your back. One last update of ability value. Turn the experience value you gain into your power. Hestia shouted at the panicked Belle with an air that was about to pounce on him. I heard that. You're going to defeat King Ottarl, aren't you? You're going to defeat that fierce man, right? You're going to go, right? Go to Freya's place. Belle's eyes widened, and then she nodded her head. When he turned around, he saw you and Mia smiling sideways at him. Waiting for you, Belle. Let's go have a little fun. Hedin didn't even look at him. He didn't even look at him, just showed his back and said, hurry up and get it over with. Stupid rabbit. Yes. The Belle chose to believe Hedin in them, and got down on one knee on the spot. Losing his armor and his battlesuit split, even his back was full of new wounds, the teenager's body caused Hestia to turn blue for a moment, then he dropped divine blood and began to update ability value. The adventurers and the beast threw the teenager down, turning the completely ruined theater into a battle of wilderness.